I don't think that anywhere in the country there's a better podcast live that's going on right now than the one that's at Panera Bread in Madison, Tennessee. So if you guys are in the Nashville area and you guys want to bum rush this establishment, they've been fantastic. You guys know that from my other show that we've been without internet throughout the week. We've had power, we have had heat, and that's very important during these times. But we have a tree on top of our house, and we don't have any internet, which is probably connected. I don't know, deep science and things going on these days. But anyway, that has led me to be at Panera several days this week, and you guys know I did a couple of broadcasts from Panera, and this broadcast I'm presently doing from Panera in Madison, Tennessee. So if you guys want to come down here and have a live broadcast, I don't know why you would get out in the elements today for this, but when you could just watch it at home in the comfort of your home, get your chai latte and get everything ready to go. But we are back. The Way Forward Show. You thought we were going to go away just because there was an ice storm, just because there's all these busy things going on our schedule? Well, you thought wrong, because my man Jason has a lot on his mind. Dr. Reverend Jason Plummer.
Government officials insist
they can't keep a good man down.
My man.
He here, folks. Welcome back, 2026. This is the first time that we've met this year.
I know.
And so I'm excited to hear your voice, see your face there on the screen, all the things, and see you guys' faces out there as well.
Yeah, we survived Snowmageddon. Well, for you, it's more Snowmageddon. For us, it's really just snow.
It's just snow. What? Nothing to see here, folks.
Nothing.
What did you expect?
Here. It's maybe a little more than we've normally had, because usually we don't get quite this much. But this one's sticking around because you got like -12. Good grief. That's like living in Antarctica type weather, or Alberta. I actually read somewhere, I think was it this weekend, it's going to be colder in Miami than it was in Juneau, Alaska.
What?
Yeah. This whole Arctic thing's supposed to be going all the way down to Cuba.
We're taking over the world. Greenland's about to be populated again. Greenland's about to be green again.
We should do a show on Greenland.
We got to do a show on Greenland, folks. Y'all don't know. Hey, we need to start getting some property up in Greenland.
We do.
For real, though. Greenland's about to be popping, y'all. I saw the models.
What you talking about?
Yeah, for the polar ice caps, man. I saw it's about to be popping up there. Vacation spots and everything.
Listen, white people barely live in Greenland.
That's all right. That's all right. We can get a flight. We can get a jacket. We're going to be up in that thing.
Man,
we're going to be up in that thing.
Breezy and 72 outside. You're ready to go inside. So I don't know how you do Greenland.
I won't be up in that thing, but
yeah.
Hey, Chicago got you down these days. Ice messing with you. Head up to Greenland. They got some space for you.
They got some space.
For you. And so, man, it's great to see you. I know your time is limited, and so I want to get into what it is that we're going to get into today. But both you and I are going, what are we talking about today? And so I just know you have a lot. You have a lot to say, as usual, per usual. And so we're going to meander our way into some things. I'm going to piggyback off of, here's what I'll do, because there's a lot of people who are watching this today. You can drop a comment in the comment section. You guys know when we get on here, we just keep it real. We love to interact with the folks that are out there. We especially love it when you guys call us idiots, because that makes the show go just right.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, we come in with a few strong opinions, perhaps today, strong motives at least, in what it is that we're doing. And so as we get into this day, I'm going to piggyback off of some of the predictions that we made in 2025 about some things that were going to happen in 2026, and then use that as a jumping off point to say pretty much everything that we predicted would happen in 2026 has already happened in the first month of the year. So I don't know. We need to revise our predictions.
Yeah.
Or they going to start calling us Nostradamus up in this thing. And we don't need all of that. I'm just saying, we represented.
We showed up with everybody else. Maybe it wasn't that unpredictable. Maybe we just saw what everybody else was seeing. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it? Maybe it's that predictable. Maybe it's like, come on, listen, it's not going to take much to see.
We saw this coming. Is anybody
Yeah.
surprised about anything that you're seeing in 2026? Raise your hand if you're surprised. Actually, raise your hand and put yourself in the comment section if you're like, I didn't see any of this coming.
I did. Yeah.
So we appreciate you guys' comments in the comment section. I got no proprietary videos at this point, but if I did, then I would put this up.
Black conscience. Oh, there we go. That's good.
Wait for it, man. Panera's internet is not that strong. So,
well, probably everybody and their uncle's using it. What happens here is they like to drive up and park in our parking lot, and then just we're doing. Yep. Yeah. We thought you coming to church, but no, you just coming to get the internet.
Get that free internet. Hey, the church, y'all's God's people, man. Y'all gotta save the community. So, give them some internet.
That's right.
Got to give them what they want.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, this is going to be such an incredible season. I'm excited because you got the Bethel situation. Who didn't see that coming? Worst kept in the evangelical world that Bethel is a fraud. We got government stuff. We got ICE stuff that's going on there, and we've had a lot of good discussions about that. Hopefully, we can get some other guests on here to discuss that because I think that needs some treatment from a variety of sources. I think. And then there's just the regular silliness of life and culture and art and So would you lead us in prayer, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, Father, we thank you so much for this opportunity. We ask that you please bless our conversation and give us the wisdom and grace we need to help the church move forward and just to be faithful to you in Christ's name. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, I predicted that we would have some kind of government things going on, that we would have church things going on, end times prophecy things going on, and we're here. And so I don't know where you want to go with that, Jason, but I know based on your social media posts that you've had recently that you've got a lot on your mind, and so I'm just going to let you carry the floor here for a few moments and then let us know what you're thinking.
Let us know what I'm thinking. I went to bed thinking 1,000 things, and I woke up thinking 1,000 things. Which thing you want me to hit on? As far as you want to look at the government stuff, with the unrest, I think we talked about there's going to be more unrest, but that hasn't disappointed. I mean, that hasn't disappointed at all with President Trump's intentionally going after sanctuary cities. And then, of course, what you're seeing up in Minnesota and the things that are happening there. And that's only going to increase. LA right now is just a mess. I don't know if you saw that this morning.
No, it's kind of hard for me to keep up with stuff, not having the internet at the house. So I got to go outside the house to get some news. But you guys can let me know. Or you can let me know what's going on in LA. Is they another protest or something going on there?
It's becoming the sanctuary city policies, which we've known are just foolish. I stand my ground on the leadership in these cities is bad. It's not good.
Okay.
I think there's plenty of examples where you can look at and see that this is just not wise. These policies are not wise. Mm-hmm. And they're not good. For instance, in a sanctuary city, if an illegal gets arrested, they don't have to detain that person if they know that ICE is coming. They can let them go, and which is odd because we're not supposed to let our criminals go necessarily, but they do. And then when the ICE is supposed to come get them, now instead of just going to the jail and getting the person who broke the law, now they have to go in the community, and that's creating a lot of problems. I mean,
yes,
on both sides. I mean, I'm not advocating that ICE has done things correctly all the time, but at the same time, the community is not always acting appropriate either, and so it's bred this sense of lawlessness there. like it's acceptable to act this way and call it under the guise of protest. So that's been disturbing. That's been because what you see on the outside looking in is it feels like the rule of law is just eroding before us.
Mm-hmm.
Who's holding these people accountable? It's one thing to stand on the sidewalk and voice your opinion. It's another thing to start collectively impeding the law enforcers and going after these things with intentionality and even funding. Now that all this stuff is coming out about Signal and that they're getting foreign backing, that they're organized. I mean, it feels insurrectionist, right? It just feels that way, and I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but it doesn't look good. And so,
let me ask you a question about basic nature of accountability when it comes to some of these discussions, because I use that terminology when I'm having discussions with people in East Nashville. Now, you guys know that in East Nashville, people are very liberal, and they very much are concerned about what's going on there. They very much have an activist kind of mindset, upwardly mobile, white, middle class, educated, liberal women. A lot of them live in East Nashville, and then you're on the artistic spectrum as well. And so that's just to give you a context of where it is that I live. And when I have these discussions with people, they use the same terminology that we would use in terms of accountability, but they would say that the accountability is not on the side of the government, on the side of ICE. Right. And so where is accountability if accountability is not rooted in, and this is kind of the backdrop that I'm getting from some of the conversations, where is accountability rooted if accountability cannot be discussed from the vantage point of the government? It has to be the citizens taking up protest positions or funding so that they can get actual messages out to people and hold the government accountable. Use their constitutional right to hold the government accountable for what it is that they're doing. They're taking these children, they're ripping them up, they're putting them in cages. So that's the conversation that I'm hearing.
Yeah. Well, the two things with that, one is the facts aren't necessarily important, and the truth isn't necessarily important in these cases. For instance, something I noticed right away, you know how the gal Renee Good passed away, being shot in the car. Before her body even hit the hospital, both sides were framing the narrative ASAP. This is what was going down. This is what was going down. And the same thing is happening with the gentleman who was shot, Freddie.
Alex Freddie.
And before the facts are out. And there used to be, I think, this agreement between the public and the government of understanding the rule of law. We're going to respect the rule of law. Yes, we have the right to protest. Absolutely. Activism in itself is not all bad. The government has proved it to us that it cannot be held itself accountable. It's always going to overreach. So we live in a country that allows us to confront that, which is great. But at the same time, where does the accountability start to cross the line on the public side? And I think these protests are not protests holding the government accountable. It's moving into something else. It's moving into lawlessness. It's got a nefarious element to it. Why would foreign money be backing these protests? And why would you be accepting foreign money? Why is it so organized that you're starting to impede federal officers from doing their job? Protest isn't meant to do that. Protest is meant to make your voice known, but we have a process for dealing with arrest, the appealing process. We have things you go through that you can make that voice known. When you start impeding officers on their job, you're running the risk of, well, what we're seeing is this violence and this catastrophe. So this agreement between the public and the government is eroding. That social contract's is at least in these sanctuary cities. In Texas, this isn't a problem. I mean, I think they're arresting twice as many more illegal immigrants in Texas, or 3 times as more. Problem, because Texas will detain people who are breaking the law and then let one officer come and get them and pull them out. That's not happening in the sanctuary cities, particularly in Minnesota. So what you're seeing in these cities is that the social contract is deteriorating. and the rule of law isn't being upheld. And now somebody's going to have to overreach. And I promise you this, at least in what my experience is, the government usually always wins, good, bad, or indifferent. And I'm not even saying it's good for the government to win. I'm just saying that when you start exerting power, the government's got way more power, and it doesn't go well.
You're gonna fight fire with fire. Then that's
it turns into
live by that. You're gonna die by that.
That's right. You live by the sword, you're going to die by it. No government in the end is going to let itself destruct this way. I mean, I think Iran is just a good example of when it gets out of hand, because that government is horrendous. That government's been absolutely horrendous. Now you've got 4% of the nation now up in the streets, which is the threshold, by the way. Big deal.
So there's a lot there, but one of the things that I am hearing on the street here in East Nashville, one of the things that I'm hearing is that in response to a plan, language like fascism, we have people who are using terminology that doesn't necessarily apply itself to the context that we find itself in, but they're using that because they say that there's a lack of other ways to describe what's going on. What is this administration if it's not a fascist administration? And I'm saying don't use that terminology, because that terminology doesn't comport with what historically we know fascism to be. Now, you talked about Iran, and I think that there's a dramatic difference in the context of what we have here in the American situation in Iran. And I think that context matters for people to recognize that there is a due process. You may not like the process,
right?
But the fact of the matter is the process can be changed. The process can be appealed to if there needs to be necessary changes. And if enough people appeal to that process because they've been convinced that the process is wrong, then those kind of things can be addressed. But it takes time. We can't just have a knee-jerk reaction. We are not social revolutionaries in the sense that we come out to a protest and then the next day President Trump gets up and he addresses the nation and says, "I'm sorry for what's going on in Minnesota." It just doesn't work that way. And so, as they say, the wheels of justice turn slowly. And I'm sorry, folks, if you don't appreciate and understand that that's the way things work in the United States of America. But juxtaposing what your argument was, Jason, go to some other place in the world and you don't get the time to make these necessary changes. You just get killed in the streets. And so I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm just simply saying you can either wait your turn in line and wait for due process to take its place and peacefully protest and redress grievances that are in our society, or you can get ran over. And a lot of people are figuring out that that's how our government works, but they should have already known that.
Well, it's funny that they say fascism is, they're trying to describe Trump, which I think fascism is actually more of a leftist ideology than is a right. Remember when Biden was in office, everybody was for the state. Everybody was for the state, and if my understanding is correctly, when you think about the historical definition of fascism, the state was supreme. The leader embodies the will of the nation, and individual rights are subordinate to national destiny. Call it that, whatever you want. I think it was Mussolini. Didn't he say something like everything within the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state? That to me describes more of the leftist mentality than does Donald Trump. Donald Trump might be a megalomaniac. Donald Trump might be narcissistic. Donald Trump might want every building named after him, but Donald Trump does not embody Mussolini, Adolf Hitler, or the whole idea of that nationalism by itself is fascism. That dissent is going to be criminalized if you are dissenting against him. He's using the court systems in place, and he's advocating a free market. He's advocating the democracy that we live in. What I'm seeing is fascism on the left-hand side, personally. The violence, the intimidation, the this idea of cultural and education, and everything is mobilized around the state agenda, which is supporting these leftist ideologies. And I saw it most clearly in Obama and President Biden. I don't see fascism in Trump, because I don't see him giving us total state authority.
Yeah.
I don't see that. I don't. So you may not like the man. Like I get that. You might have problems with the man. I just don't think you can call him a fascist or call his regime fascist.
Well, I think what people are responding to is there's a ICE surge that takes place in some of these sanctuary cities, and they look at that, and then they look at the National Guard being called up to be on standby in some of these places where there's protests, and they say, well, look, he's mobilizing the military to deal with civil unrest in our society. That seems to be fascist in the way that its orientation takes place.
And so was it fascist when Biden used the FBI to do the same thing? When he went after, remember that Catholic guy who was charged with the face? He had like 6 kids. He pushed an elderly person down because they were like yelling at his kid, and he gets attacked. You have the FBI going after their political opponents. I mean, that's fascism when you start using the government entities to start killing the dissidents. And I am not at all. I think you and I have been very clear that we've had our problems with President Trump, especially with his character. And it's not uncommon for both sides to use their office to wield consequences to political people, right? But I'll tell you, it was scary to watch President Biden in his 4 years use the arms of the government to go after not just his political people, but conservatives and Christians and things of that nature. It wasn't just him, it was the party behind him. They had no problem letting that fly. But the moment Donald Trump decides to enforce immigration laws in a city, he's fascist. So I think if you want to see fascism, wait till Donald Trump is out of office, and if they win the office again, if they get the power again, you're going to see the state unleashed like we've never seen it before. But I think.
Yeah, and what's difficult about that, Jason, is that both sides have sort of ratcheted up the rule of law in the sense of the government and its involvement in affairs, various affairs or agendas, to the point where you and I would probably say as conservatives, we would like a smaller government. I'm sympathetic to some extent, although I think libertarians are mostly cowards, but I'm sympathetic to the idea that we should have a smaller government, that if we were framing things by virtue of the Constitution, we would not have the government involved in every single thing. But it's kind of like once brinkmanship happens, once one side ratchets the government up and says, okay, we're going to be involved in education, we're going to be involved in federal bureaus of investigation, we're going to extend the bureaucracy, then the other side kind of looks at that and says, well, if we're not putting our people in charge in those areas, then we can't just abolish everything and then reinstate it every 4 years. And so both sides have kind of gotten out of control with regards to how much government influence is taking place here. I wanted to ask you this question because I think there's maybe 2 different answers here. Maybe it's the same answer, but my question is this: from the standpoint of a Christian, should we trust the American government? And then another question is, can we trust this particular government?
Hell no.
Wait a minute. There might be a soundbite for that one. Maybe we change the words on that.
No, you can't trust the government. Listen, the government is bipolar, schizophrenic. I mean, it changes moods every day. It's a head case. The guy who loves you right now can easily imprison you later. I told you this, I think it was last year, that we got to be careful with this ICE thing, right? Because I've been an advocate for ICE being able to do its job. Don't impede the federal officers. Follow the system we have in place.
Mm-hmm.
Don't put yourself in a spot you're going to get killed, because they have a gun and they have the law behind them. So I tell my kids, listen, if you're ever for some reason caught up in that nonsense, it is 100% cooperation. We'll follow the process to get you out of it if we feel like something's been unjust. But don't lose your life right there. Right? Don't
Yeah.
do the same government that's rounding up illegal immigrants is going to be the same government that wounds up against Christians when this all is all said and done.
Okay.
This is not going to stop at illegal immigrants. You give it some time. See, right now, this is one of the, remember we were talking about what should we talk about? And I said, hey, we should talk about maybe these cultural wins we think we're getting, right? And we talk about what's the difference between optimism and hope, and what's the difference between nostalgia and faithfulness, and what's the difference between, because right now you think that we're in a state of, hey, we got this. President Trump's in office. He's doing all these great things this first year. Things are great. No, I don't think so. Though I agree with a lot of his policies, I think I can get behind some of them. I can tell you what the future holds. The moment the opposition gets into office, hell is going to be unleashed on people who even associated or even thought of association or thought you were associating with that side, because they see this as a moral imperative, because that's the way the sides have been presenting both issues.
Yeah.
So the same government that is coming into cities and addressing these immigrants, and maybe you think, Jason, you're out of your rocker because the Second Amendment guarantees the freedom of religion. Did you see what happened in the cities when Don Lemon and his crew crossed that line and went into that church? Did you see that?
That was the reaction in the church, or the reaction to Don Lemon?
Just in general. Did you watch that whole thing unfold?
Oh yeah.
And you didn't hear the left outcrying, saying that no, that's a line you don't cross. We have the freedom of religion. No, because the idea is, listen, you got to do whatever it takes to get your point across. That means you got to disrupt their church service. You disrupt it. Well, take that idea and put it into somebody who's actually got the power to do something about it. Make a few changes in the Supreme Court, and all of a sudden your religious liberty is toast. It's been toast since 2012, for the mere fact that there's no way that freedom of religion can coexist with the gender ideology that's been accepted now inside of our culture. This is not going to happen.
Yeah,
because that's going to be labeled hate speech. So in 2008, 2012, you started seeing the deterioration of the freedom of religion right there. That was the beginning of the end for us. We're a few years away from that making a turn to it being a real reality, that I sit in the pulpit, I start to preach something that is against the narrative that comes from the left side, and the police show up and say, listen, you're going to jail. And then what I'm going to hear from the left side is, hey, the federal officers are doing their job. I mean, you said it, don't impede the investigation. Is doing their job. That's going to happen.
Well, here we go. I mean, you start talking and our viewership starts going down because you're talking about Christians being in prison for freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Folks, I want to hear that on a Saturday morning. But no, here's something that, and I agree with you. I think that you've hit the nail on the head. I just wanted to add some levity to the conversation. But I thought Al Mohler did a really great job of hitting two key points in this discussion this week. And there's two things that I think have to factor into everything that we're talking about. And one of them is this: from a government and constitutional standpoint, we have to look at the issue of nullification. And when these sanctuary cities, there is a context for the discussion, the violence that you see, and the protesters that are going there, and the funding that's going there, and the people who are out completely outside of the bounds of U.S. citizens who are coming in and being a part of these things. If you can set up laws and cities where the rule of law for the rest of the nation does not apply, one must wonder if the rule of law applies anywhere.
Yeah.
And so the nullification situation that we're facing is a clear and present danger, I would think, from a constitutional standpoint, as well from a legal standpoint. Can these cities operate in such a way that they're harboring people who have criminality associated with them because they're in our country illegally? If they can do that, what stops anybody, to your point, in future administration from setting up more sanctuary cities, and then eventually the rule of law and the borders has no consequence whatsoever, and it means absolutely nothing. But the second thing I thought that Albert Mohler hit this week, and he did a great job this week. I don't know if you still talk to Daddy Miller. I know you went to Southern Seminary, but if you get a chance to message it, do what?
We stopped texting each other.
Oh, you stopped texting? Hey, you need to text him and tell him he had a good week. I don't know if he got some extra sleep. I don't know. I don't know.
That man no sleep. Like 2
I was
hours.
gonna say, it seemed like he was spot on this week, because the second thing that he talked about is everything. And listen, guys, I think Jason and I are on lockstep on this, and tell me if you're not, but I know that you probably are. Everything that you see in the news, everything that you see in politics is not just siloed into political discussion or here's sociological study or psychological study. All of it has worldview implications, and all of it is connected to a religious ideology.
Yeah.
Your religion might be mainstream Orthodox or evangelical Christianity, or your religion and all the things that are necessary for you to carry out your religion may be politics, or it may be protesting, or it may be because everybody, as they say, got to worship somebody.
Yeah. No, this is why the church has got to not get so caught up. Like we were talking about earlier, but the cultural wins, you know what I mean? Like what is
WINDS?
Yeah. And you have to think about what's going to happen 10 years down the road, because there are some things that are embedded. Okay, let's think about this for a second, that have now laid root and are here. One, gender ideology is now embedded in education and medicine. Think about that. Gender ideology is in our education systems. We're teaching kids from a very young age about gender fluidity. We're also talking about even pediatrics, and medicine is starting to give into this idea that gender's there, right? Marriage is culturally redefined, regardless of law. It is now accepted to be same-sex marriage. It's there. It's in the law. Your speech and my speech is increasingly being policed. The very fact that we have something called hate speech, which I just think, how in the world do you have the freedom of speech and still have hate speech, right? Even though we have a reprieve right now because President Trump is in office and he's not applying as much, nearly the pressure that, say, President Biden was, the church is still viewed in suspicion right now. These are embedded things. Okay. The church is foolish if we are to be optimistic because we have political power.
Mm-hmm.
Because optimism, I think, is circumstantial, and it depends on trends. And right now we're trending okay because we have the right people in office. And if the right people remain in office, maybe we trend okay. Those winds turn immediately when power is lost and the people get in there who are going to espouse these ideas. And here's why I say it this way. I've been listening to some conservative pundits on YouTube, and they're all talking about how woke is being destroyed, how liberalism is being destroyed, the Democratic Party is being destroyed, and I'm just like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's just.
Don't believe the hype. He said, don't believe the hype.
You have 80 million people who have bought into it and are drinking the Kool-Aid. It's not going anywhere. Okay, you're going to get people in office. This is going to turn, and many Christians believe that certain court decisions or elections is going to stabilize the culture. That's optimism. I'm sorry. We're called to hope. That's the difference. That's the difference. We're not called to optimism. We're called to hope. I think hope is more covenantal, maybe.
Yeah.
Hope is definitely dependent on promises that in the end, Christ is going to hold fast. And so that's where I think the church needs to make more ground, because I think we're trying to trying to make decisions based on optimism and maybe not hope. That's my complaint.
Yeah, and that's good. I want to go back to something that you said. I mean, I don't even know, Jason, if we need to have a script for the show. I mean, it is good for us to research and have some things, but there are so many things that just come up in the nature of conversation between the two of us that I would really like to, center in on some of these things a lot more, maybe in future episodes. But I'm watching identity politics play out in a weird way, right? There's this whole reaction to wokeism in our society and in our culture. BLM is out there. The Me Too movement has started. There's various groups that are vying for a voice because they've been oppressed too long, and they're going to get their day in court, their day in the sun, and people are marching and protesting. They've got momentum behind them. I was concerned, and you and I had this conversation about Christian nationalism. And I said, if we don't watch it, the church is going to be hijacked into a political agenda that essentially says, well, we've been oppressed now because now everybody's upset about people being white and this and that. And so that group of dissidents is now going to form their own identity group. And you see that in people like Nick Fuentes. What concerns me is the idea that people conflate some of these voices that are sort of the extreme but Christian, and I say that with air quotes, folks. I hope you can see. If you're just listening to this in your car, you're listening, I had that with air quotes. People call themselves Christians, but their speech is political, their rhetoric is political, their means are very political and even aggressive. How do we instill trust in people when they say, well, you can't trust the government because you already gave hell to the no to that one. You can't even trust the church because on the one side there's scandal, but on the other side, the church seems to be, in their understanding, complicit in some of this because they're either speaking in such a way or they're not speaking in a particular way. How do we lead people back to this area of trust? Who can you trust these days? If you can't trust the government, you can't trust the church, you can't trust the Christians, you can't trust the non-Christians, you can't trust the liberals, you can't trust the conservatives, can't trust. How do we establish that? Because I feel like we can't even have conversations if we don't have good faith that we can even have a conversation that is going to be productive.
Yeah, I think I've experienced some of that on Facebook recently. I got caught up in I don't know. I was really upset about. I've been upset about what's going on in Minnesota. I love Minnesota. Minnesota is where I got married. I got saved and did a lot of my discipleship there. And so Minnesota's always had a special place in my heart. I got some wonderful friends up there. And I just hated seeing the cities tore up because it was such a beautiful place to visit and just watching all this go down. And so I'm also seeing the lawlessness and all that go down. And so I made this really brash comment on Facebook that it didn't have a lot of thought behind it and wasn't considering, who was listening or reading it and wasn't considering all the facts. I mean, it was just dumb. It was a very brandish, rash comment that I probably shouldn't have made, even though some of the elements of the comment I think were right as far as the truths. I do think there's a problem in the leadership in Minnesota. I am not a fan of Waltz or Frey. I just think the way they've handled this whole thing is absolutely horrendous as far as leadership goes. They have to do better. I mean, they have to do better. But at the same time, my tone was not at all. Christ was not ruling that tone when I said what I said. It was not there.
This is confession time, folks.
Yeah. So I had to sit back and I had to watch the conversations. It fed quickly. I mean, I had people going back and forth, people agreeing, people disagreeing. I mean, and I just was watching the disruption happen on the Facebook page. And some of these
your joints went viral this week.
Yeah. And some of these people I really care about, and I think well of them. I've watched them on Facebook. I've watched their kids play baseball, and I've kind of kept up with their families. And I know that one particular gal's got an immigrant for a husband, and she's in there being affected by this. And And so it paused me to stop and think for a second, who's reading this comment? What context are they reading it in? And is Jesus being exalted in what I'm doing? And I had to arrive at this place and, well, no, I wasn't being conscientious of any of that. And so I fed into the narrative of the us versus them, and I fed into the narrative that you can't trust anybody. Like, you can't trust Christians because we're just going to side on the side of whatever, and without the facts and all emotion, we're just going to rip into each other. And when I did that, I had to come back and write a post on, okay, this is what was going on in my heart. This is what I'm fearful of. This is where I made mistakes. And this is where I got to do better. And I'm sorry. And I want to be able to produce things on a social media platform that actually maybe encourages a little more humility as we're discussing some very complicated issues and recognizing that we are culturally exhausted. And so,
Okay, I saw that part. The
I
long
said,
COVID kind of situation.
yeah, I said we are culturally exhausted. It's like we're in one prolonged panic attack. We're just sitting there, you know, and so everything is just kind of this at this edge. And I didn't recognize that as a pastor, as a Christian. So I say all this to say that when Christians, I think, begin to dialogue that way and begin to say, look, we've got to pull back and we have got to, if I'm going to criticize Waltz's leadership and Frey's leadership, then I've got to exhibit better leadership on my own end, on my own small platform. And so that's what I did. I made the post. It wasn't nearly as hot as my first post, but I think it got my point across.
May I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to stand in between a pastor and God Almighty speaking to your heart to confess and say the things that you said in that media post. I think that all of us could probably should evaluate ourselves whether or not, and what it did for me is, am I guilty of the same thing? Am I responding in the ways that are appropriate for my comportment and my calling in life and station in life? So it didn't make me reflect on some things, but I was wondering, Jason, was this a categorical, or I should say a context situation where you can hold the views and say the things that you were doing but maybe the context of Facebook wasn't the place to have those discussions?
Yeah.
Maybe the way that it was, but this platform and maybe another platform would be a more appropriate context to be able to say some of the things you were saying? Or do you just feel like, hey man, I was wrong, I shouldn't even said some of those things, I was a fool?
No, I think so. I say something along the lines of, towards the end, that none of what I'm saying denies the importance of truth or law or wisdom. And I'm not saying that even what I said was entirely wrong. I think the leadership is bad, but I need to reorder how I pursue saying these things. And Facebook does not always provide the platform, the right nuance, and the ability to have these discussions, because it's just I could put something on the Facebook and all of a sudden people are reading it and there's no context, there's no personal accountability, there's no immediate accountability as I'm talking. So for instance, I have a friend in Minnesota and she's married to an immigrant. If I was talking to her face to face about this, that conversation would go very differently. I could maybe express my concern about the leadership in Minnesota and at the same time be listening to her concerns about what's going on, and we could have a fruitful dialogue. That's not happening on Facebook at all. And so I had to kind of make the point that not every post needs to be addressed like this. And I want to have these conversations, but I need to have more face-to-face in Facebook. So yeah, understanding the platform doesn't always lend itself to that. And I'm finding with social media that if you're going to post something on Facebook, you're better off keeping it more encouragement and what you hope for than what you're reacting to something bad. Because if you'll look at the post, what I said that stirred everybody up into anger, man, they were hot on that. When I come back and say, hey, I'm sorry or something, it's not provoking much discussion. They may read it and acknowledge it, but it's not like we're having this great discussion on how humility plays a factor into something or whatever, So we're prone on Facebook just to jump into the stuff we disagree about versus the stuff that we find helpful.
Is that because, and I'm asking myself the question because I already kind of know the answer, is that because the nature of the conversation needs to be general enough so that people who are just scrolling by, it's like, oh, look, Erskine and Jason are on, I'll watch this for a couple of minutes. Like, are we well served to be able to have some of these discussions in sound bites if the sound bite has to take place in 30-second increments, or they're going to watch 2 minutes of what it is that we have to say? Does that necessitate that we speak about certain things a particular way? I mean, neither one of us are concerned about popularity.
No.
If you hadn't seen this show before and you ever wondered about whether or not we're concerned about popularity, you don't need to worry about that. This show is evidence of the fact that we started, what was it, 7 or 8 seasons ago, and now we have 7 or 8 followers, and so we're picking up about a follower a season. So we've never been concerned about metrics, and so we're not trying to shock people.
No.
But we do feel very strongly about these issues as it relates to the church moving forward. And I see that your responsibility as a headmaster of a school, a pastor, is to help people who are scrolling and they finally hit what it is that you're saying. You know, a couple of weeks ago, you posted something on a Sunday and you said, I don't ever post on a Sunday, but this is happening in a church on Sunday. And it was in reference to the protest. Those kind of things are going to be sort of a speed bump in the scrolling road of some of your congregation or some of the people that meet you. Probably needs to be worth, I don't want to say worth their time. It's all worth their time since you're speaking truth. But like, I don't know, a strong, real opinion that's going to help them think through an issue or give them a quick narrative or a quick frame. Like,
I don't
I'm not
think
going to justify everything.
I don't think you shy away from giving, I think, a well-informed opinion. Like, my first comment wasn't well-informed. It was rash. So I should have been more informed, I should have waited for more facts to come out about what was going on before I said what I said. More particularly with the Preddy gentleman who was shot. But I don't think you back away. I just think my tone has to be better. I can't contribute to the fire already. You know what I'm saying? Because there is like I said, I made a post yesterday, loving earnestly in a time of cultural exhaustion. When you are exhausted, you're not at your best. I literally open up the call it an art. I don't know what you want to call it, an article post. I'm not very kind dressed. I mean, that's confession. I mean, my wife and kids can tell you that when I'm stressed out, I'm not the nicest person in the world. Okay. Well, what's happening in me, I think, is happening in this nation. We are not the nicest people in the world right now. Why? Because we are exhausted. Everything from COVID to the narratives we're being fed that aren't honest, the us versus them, the we're making mountains out of molehills, the inflation, the manipulation on on social media. I mean, you just name it. I could just keep adding on one thing after thing after thing, and we're just about ready to explode. It's almost like you need to breathe. You need to relax. And what I'm doing is, if I'm making these comments that are uninformed and they're explosive, I'm literally kicking you in the gut while you're trying to breathe. So I would rather put my hand on your shoulder and say, hey, let's take a breath for a second. Let's relax. Because that's what I would do pastorally. You know, if I got in my office sitting in front of me, if I had America sitting right in my office in my chair, you know, I would be doing biblical counseling. We would be addressing the panic that's happening in your life right now. Pressure. And we would be talking through how the Bible speaks to this. I wouldn't be adding more panic onto your panic. So when I sat back and thought about it pastorally, that's where my mind went. I got to level down. I got to put my hand on your shoulder and say, okay, we obviously, you know, we're at a place where we need to talk about this.
Sure.
And let's do this in a way that I could still truth, sometimes pointed, but definitely with a tone that has to be about caring and humility. And I don't think in my last several posts over the last month, I don't think that's where I was.
Okay.
They're becoming more rash because I was becoming more inflamed by what I would say the nonsense I'm seeing. And I think when I peel it
Yeah.
back, it's the disintegration of this country that I love dearly, and this society that my neighbors and the things, and even I would say the America I grew up in that my kids aren't going to experience, all of that is just being destroyed right now. And so it's been a
Yeah.
gut reaction. And so I
I
make that
don't.
think when I
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And let's, for those of you who watch this show, you know that we do this. We'll take some time off during Christmas, and we don't come back until now. It's kind of getting near the end of January to just take some time to just decompress from some of the stories and things that are out there. Spend some time with our families. Just kind of sort our own lives out. Kind of do the deep work of reflection. We really do feel like that's important to have those kind of quality times where we can investigate our own heart and our own motives. But I really do believe this, Jason, and I don't know how many seasons by God's grace we'll have an opportunity to do this, but I really do feel like even though we don't have a ton of subscribers, the world needs this show. They desperately need this show, because as I'm doing research for various shows that I'm on, the polemics in our situation, I think, is what is exhausting people. To have somebody that you believe can be at least intellectually honest enough to say, we don't agree with everything that Donald Trump does. We don't always endorse everything, maybe procedurally, that ICE does. And so that's a part of the discussion, but it's not the discussion. We also want to endorse these other things. I think has often put us in a position where we're kind of straddling between both sides and ready to be shot on a firing squad by both sides. And we've had some views in which there have been some very conservative evangelical Christians who have said, well, yeah, I don't really rock with you on this particular position. And then obviously on the other side, those that wouldn't agree with our position and our take on that. But I really do think that that's where a lot of people are, if they're intellectually honest, by looking at things and saying, well, I don't always agree with everything with Trump. And I think one of the problems that I'm seeing is you can be conservative, and what we don't see in our government is people who are conservative, who are connected with the cause of, the upbuilding and encouragement of America as it stands, who are willing to criticize at times their own party, because that sort of chink in the armor gets you ostracized immediately. If you're conservative and you're not towing the party line. If you don't agree with everything, then you don't agree with anything. And I don't think that that's very helpful. And so I think this show actually has the capacity, and I told somebody this even in a conversation today, the Christian and biblical worldview is the only, and I say this with great clarity and moral conviction, is the only truth worldview that addresses all of the situations. You can have, and I use this as an example. I said the first thing that I did before I jumped into what my response was to Renee Good was to say that a life was lost. Let me put a full stop and pause before I continue with what it is that I have to say about the situation, because a life was lost, and all of us will stand before the Lord and give an account for our lives. This person is now doing that in the presence of Jesus, going to either eternal judgment or to eternal reward. All of us will face that. And so let's stop and pause and lament when necessary for a life that was lost and the things that were lost in the losing of that life. We can speak to that with some great clarity and moral authority. We can also speak to the issues on both sides. Humane and humanitarian treatment for an individual who's made in the image of God. Absolutely. We got that on our scorecard. The rule of law, Romans 13. We got that on our scorecard as well. Any number that you call out, we're ready to say bingo, because we've got all of the things, all of the chips, so to speak, on our bingo card, and we can address all of that from a biblical and Christian worldview. No other world religion can say that. No other system can say that. No other truth can say that, because there is no other truth outside of Christianity.
Amen. Oh, well said. Well said. That's why it's grounded in hope and not just optimism. Like what you said there, we have the right worldview. It's not arrogance. It's just confidence in the risen Christ.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just realized that Panera is not going to let me share videos, because I had some things that, as you were talking, I was queuing up, and they are restricted in Panera if you're on their Wi-Fi. They won't even let me say the views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily those of Panera Bread in Madison, Tennessee. I can't even give a disclaimer and get some of my videos up there so that we can have a discussion with some visual aids. So hopefully, prayerfully, the internet will be back next week and I'll be able to queue up some of these videos because there are people who are speaking to the exact things. And I don't know if you saw my broadcast about, you can call me Dr. Erskine now because I can answer what a biological male is. And I can tell you with great moral clarity and authority that men can't get pregnant. Men don't get pregnant.
Not get pregnant.
But apparently doctors can't say that these days. They don't know.
That gender stuff's ingrained in our medicine. Are you kidding me? I mean, that was the last frontier. I thought for sure the doctors be like, listen, I know the body and you don't have the equipment to get pregnant. And they're
biology, science.
Yeah.
They say they believe, but help their unbelief. Help thou their unbelief.
It's a scary thing if I walk into a doctor's office and say, I feel like I'm pregnant because I identify as a woman. He's like, okay, I guess we're going to ultrasound you and check you out.
No, it just gets to moral absurdity.
Like pounds of lard and a liver that needs help. You're not going to find a baby. Good grief.
It gets to moral absurdity. I literally passed by a guy here. I'm in Madison, Tennessee. Y'all know what's up if y'all are in the Nashville area. And there was a guy on the corner of the road and he was yelling at traffic, but there wasn't any traffic. He was one of those guys. He was angry. He was angry. If you happened to stop your car next to him, you'd have thought he was angry at you. But clearly he was out of his mind. I don't know.
Like 4 degrees in Nashville.
Exactly. He might have been tweaking a little bit also, but at the same time, we kind of understand the context of that. This is a crazy person who's out there on the side of the road. It just, when it's dressed in different clothes that looks like somebody that's respectable and somebody that's tenured and they have credentials, we're shocked when we hear them say equally ridiculous and
crazy
loony type things.
Yep.
So, anyway, I know we give takeaways on this, but we will come with a topic of research and discussion next week. But this was good to kind of freestyle, get us back in the game, so to speak. But I feel like it was important for you to be able to say that about the social media conflict that you were working through this week. Much appreciated. The clarion call there to just humility, ultimately.
If the church could practice that, I mean, if the culture is exhausted by, I think fear, Christ is going to call his people, hey, we don't have to panic. Let's be kind of a repentant, humble kind of people who earnestly love one another.
Yeah.
I think we can be a legitimate voice, a relevant voice in all this. If the church continues to just add gas to the fire and join the polarism that's there, we're in trouble. So, and I know when Christians hear that, they're like, oh, you're just compromising your convictions. No, Jesus is first, always king. I would love to talk to Paul about what he meant on being all things to all people for the sake of Christ. I'd love to sit down with him and say, Paul, help me understand that here in 2026 as an American citizen who is trying to proclaim the same gospel you were proclaiming to Athens and Corinthia and all that, and help me understand where the boundaries are in the context of even 1 Corinthians 13. All things to all people, exemplifying love, and yet being willing to be stoned, get back up and walk into the city and preach the gospel. That's what we have to, as Christians, it can't be about these political wins. It's got to be about the kingdom. And I think maybe God is forcing our hand on that.
Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Well, this is an incredible episode. We had my social media AI assistant who was helping out with the show. You didn't know this, But the reason why this went so well is I had an AI media assistant named Newton who was helping out with the show. Newton, can you come in and say hello? So Newton was on the ones and twos helping to produce the show today. This show was great today. I'm not really that great, but when you have AI assistants, it's better. I got to keep you on your toes. All right. That's another one for the record book.
All right, bro. Be good.
All right. We out, folks. We'll be doing this. You free next weekend?
I think so. I'm not really going anywhere. It's
okay.
Cold.
Because there's a lot of stuff out there, bro. There's that interracial marriage stuff. Joel Webbin and some of the things that he's been talking about lately, and some of his debates that I'd love to.
Blacks and whites are getting married. What?
Well, I'm actually against interracial marriage, and so I'm going to talk. I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong in all occasions and in all contexts. I'm against interracial marriage.
You just can't see the difference between black people and white people. That's what it is. You're blind.
Well, if we're talking about the human race as opposed to the animal race,
yeah,
I have to be against interracial marriage because I don't think people should be marrying animals. Save the whales from people trying to do nefarious things to them. But yeah, we need to come out and tease out some of these things. And then, obviously Bethel came out and made a statement. They apologized, but it's funny. It's funny these days. People who have power, I guess they don't like to not have power.
Yeah.
So the bigger the ship, an apology. Whereas if you and I did some of the things that they had done knowingly, wantingly for years and years and years, we would be needing to resign because of the discredit of our character and ministry. So it's interesting. It's interesting out there, folks. You're swimming with sharks. You're swimming with sharks. And this show is the only opportunity you have most of the time every week to jump the sharks and get to truth.
Here I am.
It's the way forward, folks.
Government officials insist